You're listening to the T21 podcast, brought to you by Down Syndrome Group of the Ozarks. Our mission is to bring life and wellness to families who are advocating towards a community of inclusion for individuals with Down syndrome. Hello and welcome to the T21 podcast. My name is Chloe Jones and joining with me today is Amy Bullard.
Hello.
And one special guest that I'll get to in just one moment. But here on the T21 podcast, we explore topics that are relevant to the Down syndrome community in 21 minutes or less. And today we're going to be talking about support coordination. But first, I just wanted to invite you to invite friends to listen to this podcast, and you can like and subscribe below, and we will get on with the podcast today. Today, we have Miss Jennifer Giordano. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, ladies. My name is Jennifer Giordano, and I am the Director of Support Coordination for WC Partners, and we are the Webster County Board for Developmental Disabilities.
Yeah, and she also has a son, Joseph, who works with me on Thursdays here at the shop, and he has a brand called Jogo. He sells fanny packs and bags, and he's with me every Thursday, and we have so much fun. He's definitely brought a light to my job here, so it's been a blast having him. And I also wanted to say that we were talking the other day, and I had no idea what you did for work, and you told me, I'm like, we need to have you on the podcast, like, in a couple weeks. So I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
I think what you have to say is so important, and it's something that the special needs community needs to know about, and kind of your side and your perspective of what support coordination is. So would you like to start just explaining what is support coordination?
Sure. Support coordination is just case management done through the Division for Developmental Disabilities, which is a division of the Department of Mental Health here in Missouri. Here in Missouri, we have five regional offices with several satellite offices. And they used to do the case management throughout the state, but they got out of the business of case management several years back. And now they determine eligibility, but then once eligibility is determined, then they will assign an individual to the county in which they reside. So some counties, the county board does the case management, and in other counties, they have contracted with a case management agency to do that.
Okay.
So what specifically can support coordinators do for families and specifically for our kiddos with Down syndrome, but anybody with a disability?
Well, support coordinators, first of all, they'll meet with the family, with the individual guardian, people that are important to that person, and they'll do what's called person-centered planning. So they'll meet with them, they'll find out all about the individual, their family, their strengths, what's important to them, their hopes and dreams, their challenges, and what their needs are. They write what's called an individual support plan, and then that support plan kind of guides where the services go from there. And so a support coordinator, let's say for a child, maybe the most important thing in that child's life during that phase would be what's going on with special education at school. So a support coordinator may work with the family to plan for educational meetings. They may accompany them to IEP meetings. They may advocate for them at the school, a variety of things like that. Support coordinators for kids or adults might provide like information and resources, connect families with community resources or public benefits, help people apply for Social Security or SSI benefits. They can help solve problems, address challenges. They can do referrals for appropriate health care, and connect them with paid services if there's a need that's appropriate for.
They wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, I was going to say, and also throughout the whole life.
Yes.
So what does that timeline look like? Because you said child and then through adulthood. When do you think that process would start for a family?
Well, we say that like for support coordination typically is anywhere from age 3, like when children age out of first steps, all the way to the end of life. Mm-hmm. So we are there to walk with people and try to help meet needs and address needs and help plan for transitions and all sorts of things all through an individual's lifespan.
I've always found, as a special ed teacher, I've always found it really beneficial to have support coordinators that have served families for a long time, because they can come into our meetings with a very big amount of knowledge to A, with what the school is doing, but B, with what the families, hopes and dreams and challenges are, and we can kind of merge those two plans together. But also, when you have a kiddo that's getting ready to graduate, I feel like they really, really keep things going, right? They keep the momentum going forward, instead of those kiddos that never get a support coordinator because they don't follow through with the process. Oftentimes the buck stops after they graduate. So I feel like support coordinator is super important in my role, just to keep the families moving forward and the kiddo moving forward. Do you find that that's...
Oh yeah, that's
the case?
too often we get new clients in that it's after there's been some kind of crisis, or the person there's been a transition, and we have kids that have aged out of high school and they graduate, and then there's just nothing for them, and they're just sitting at home and they don't really have anything to do. They don't have a place to go. They're not, families don't know really what the next step is for them.
Right.
And so we really encourage people to have a support coordinator, even when you don't feel like you need one. Like we have, a lot of people think, well, we've got everything covered. We've got plenty of resources. We've got lots of natural support. We don't really need any help. But really, in this community, we all know that like one day things can be going great, and the next day, everything is going haywire. So, and then trying to get help at that point in time when you're in crisis, sometimes the process takes time. Almost always the process takes time. So the best time to have a support coordinator is when you don't need one. That way, if something happens,
you're already ready.
Yeah, like things
fair.
can start happening very quickly to address a need.
Right.
That's really good. I feel like Down Syndrome Group of the Ozarks, who is sponsoring this podcast, we get a lot of calls of families that are in crisis, and they want to know what resources they have, and that is something that we would like them to have, is a support coordinator to help them before it gets to that point. So that's really good how you said that. It's when they don't need it.
Yeah.
I love that.
It is. But also, those families already in crisis. You can start then, too. You can start then. But yes, it is helpful to have it ahead of time.
Yeah. Things just come together much more quickly.
Right.
And sometimes, something that can be resolved before it becomes a bigger crisis, when people can respond in a really timely manner.
Right. A lot of the services that you talked about were services that can happen day to day, or whatever, but you also talked about services that might require waivers and might require additional funding. That is something I run into a lot, because a lot of our kiddos are transitioning into the world beyond high school, and waivered services are what we need. Can you talk about what those waivered services are and kind of where we are in the state of the union currently?
Sure. So we actually just came off of a really good time in the world of services. COVID brought a lot of extra money into the state coffers and things, and everybody was all about making sure people's needs got met. But let me start back with what are waivers. So waivers are a mechanism by which Medicaid will pay for services for people with disabilities that Medicaid typically just wouldn't pay for. So there's a limited number of waivers that are available throughout the state of Missouri, but I don't know how many of those are, so I didn't look that up. But once those waivers have been assigned, unless they create additional waivers, there are no more possibilities of services. So last year, when the fiscal year 25 budget was being tossed around, Governor Parsons did advocate for an increase in the budget for the Division for Developmental Disabilities, but the legislature took away that increase, and so that threw us into a wait list situation, which it means any service requests that need to be made for any reason whatsoever, are put onto a wait list, and we don't know when that wait list will end. So it continues to build. As of December, for in-home community services, things like services that would get our individuals out into the community, or provide services to learn independent skills, or provide services to obtain and maintain employment. There's 456 people on the wait list for those services right now. Well, I say right now, as of December. For residential services, which are comprehensive wraparound services for people who need them, the wait list is 71 individuals, and there are no exceptions for emergencies.
Wow.
So we could have one of our individuals with Down syndrome who lose their primary caregiver, have no backup caregivers, no support system, who need residential services, and that will only get them on the wait list. There is no money allotted for even emergency situations.
That's so sad.
And
It
what
is.
they do is just hope
Yes.
for that to go down. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it can depend on the level of need and
Right.
things like that. But yeah, it's been a while since we've seen a wait list. Since before COVID.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
we've had a wait list. So this is a different situation that a lot of families are not familiar with.
Well, hopefully, we're all going to hope and pray that
Yeah.
that wait list goes on, because the services that are offered are so awesome and so needed.
They
so
are.
needed. So
What
I
can we
appreciate that.
do and the listeners do to help that? I know we talked about before this podcast, calling your state legislative, and what does that look like? What can we say? What can we do? Is there anything?
Well, I think the most important thing is, like we were talking before we started filming, is unless a person has a personal connection with someone with Down syndrome or other disability, I mean, if they don't, we are largely invisible. And so the most important thing is that we make sure that we're not invisible, that we're contacting our legislators and letting them know that we're here, what our lives look like, what our needs are, what are the hopes and dreams that our loved ones have and that we have for them, and what that's going to entail to make those things happen, and to kind of impress upon them that this isn't a luxury, this is something that they need, and that this is something that's important, and that this should be valued by everyone, not just by families of those with disabilities.
Exactly. I'll actually, in the podcast's notes, have the state legislator's number and also a description of what you can say when you call or email to kind of help this process and help the funding and all of this, because I think that is so, so important, especially if you don't have a family member or a loved one with Down syndrome or special needs or disabilities, whatever it may be. If you just care, that is something that would be a huge, huge help. So yeah, this is what I wanted to share, because I think everyone needs to know that they can do a part in it, and that, yeah, you need to be seen, and it's so important what you do. And yeah, I can't even imagine.
Well, and also I want to make sure everybody understands that, like, we have a new governor coming in. We have lots of new legislators. They're all going to be kind of learning their job. They're going to be looking at the state budget. The budget for this fiscal year is set, but it can be amended, and I'm sure that that's going to be a hot topic here in probably January, maybe into February, and then as we move into the spring, we're going to be looking at the fiscal year 26 budget. So hopefully, I mean, if we can't get an amendment to ease this wait list, maybe with the new fiscal year starting in July of 25, we can get some services to some people who need them.
Because again, how many are on the wait list for residential?
71.
And then how many for just having staff and care?
456.
Wow.
That's as of December, so
Not even as of now.
And the wait list grows every day.
Every day, yeah.
Wow.
But I do want to reiterate that, like, there are services that are available that don't require the waivers. So, like, you guys, support coordinators can still help families,
Yes.
right? And
yes,
so,
absolutely.
I want to just make sure that I mean, although the waiver is huge and the funding is huge, I just want families to know that support coordinators can help in a variety of ways, and going to school for IEP meetings is huge. And
having an advocate, wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Families need that.
Yeah, not every need requires a service.
Right.
But sometimes individuals or families, having someone that walks alongside them and can provide maybe a different way of looking at things or ask some questions they haven't thought about before can help them plan for transitions and kind of what they want going forward in life.
Right. And I think just the families having someone that already knows them and knows what their desires and wishes are can help advocate a little bit better, because sometimes you get in those meetings and it's really intimidating, Yeah. And so to have somebody on the outside looking in saying like, hey, we've been working on this for several years. Is there something we can add to, help that? I think that's helpful.
Well, I was a parent too. Joseph was in special education. Even though I was a support coordinator at the time and had a lot of experience, I still had his support coordinator, who was one of my coworkers, come with us to IEP meetings. Just as a parent, we go to a school meeting, a lot of information is coming at us. We have a lot to say. Sometimes we walk out of those meetings and we can't remember what was said about a specific thing, or we go into the meeting and we want to talk about several things and we forget about them when we get in there. Having that person with you that can say, yeah, what about this? Remember, you wanted to ask this question. Or so, having
That's
that
good.
advocate that can kind of hold your hand through things, I think is so valuable.
Well, and even though you are in this role, you take off that hat and you put on the mom hat when you get in those meetings. And
Yeah.
I have 2 children that are on IEPs, and I get that. And I'm a special ed teacher, but you get in there and you're like, I'm mom right now. And so you try to be that role and focus on your kiddo versus the laws and the rules and the right.
Yeah.
And so it feels good to have somebody else there to speak for you. So I love that
Yeah.
perspective.
Well, thank you so much for being on. And then also, I'm going to have in the description, I mentioned a couple things, but obviously the note for the legislators and the numbers and contacts for that. And I also want to plug Joseph's brand. And so I'll have his bags linked in the description as well, so that you can shop Jogo and all things that he loves and sells. So yeah, well, thank you so much.
Well, and if anybody has any questions, I'm always happy to answer them.
Yes.
So I can just leave my contact information with you,
Yes.
Chloe. And if anybody wants to contact me, whether it's through email or a
That
phone
is so
call,
good.
I am happy to
Yes.
talk to them.
I'll add her as well
Wonderful.
to the description. Well, thank you so much, and
Thank
we
you.
will see you guys
Thank
so
you.
soon. If you would like to learn more about Upside Down Mercantile, you can go to shopupsidedown.com or visit us on Commercial Street in Springfield, Missouri. If you have a topic you'd like to know more about, you can email them to info@dsgo.life.